Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum, and the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, hello, kids, and welcome to Season 3 and Episode number 33 of the True North Eager Beaver Interview Project. When we have the privilege of welcoming a guest to the Beaver Lodge, we offer them an opportunity for an extended chat to get to know them a little bit better and see what makes them tick. And when they agree, we present the results to you. Today, recording day is Wednesday, September 6, 2023, and it has been a scorcher of a day here at the Beaver Lodge, with temperatures feeling like 36 degrees Celsius.
For a year.
I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronounce he, him. Hey, Mr. Beaver, you're a little schwitzy. And, I am just elated that you have taken time out of your life to include us into your day. I promise that we have something particularly special for you today, dear kids. Of course, with me as always, as you have heard, is my dear friend, Mr. Grizzly. And this week in particular, my calming influence.
Doing my best.
Of course, a big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com, who we love very much. They've been very good to us. We could not ask for kinder support. And before we immerse ourselves in some political dish kits, we have some priorities, and that's to offer grandiose greetings to our little podcast that could steady and stalwart mate. Hello to you, Mr. Grizzly. How's your mental health today?
Well, hello, Mr. Beaver. My mental health is actually surprisingly good today.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's let's be honest. We've had a stressful couple of tech days. Things just going sideways, not working. Very much a stressful day for me at work. Not because I had to get into the office, log on. That didn't work. That computer doesn't work. I've got two very powerful computers in front of me, and cameras wouldn't turn on, lights wouldn't turn on, microphones wouldn't work. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go get a cup of coffee and have a chat with a couple of my coworkers. Then I'll come back and restart everything and start over again, take a breather, try and be a calming influence on myself. And it worked. Everything fell into place. Now, it was a very busy day, which I was rejoiceful for. And I realized, summer is definitely over because everyone was back in the office today. It was busy.
Man. Gee, for me, not as good.
No, we spent a few hours today trying to get things fixed, and
I might have to buy a new computer.
Yeah,
It won't turn back on.
I think it's got to that point. How old is that machine now?
Maybe about 6 years.
Yeah, it's probably it's getting a little long in the tooth, right?
A
It
little.
was never built for what we're using it for,
That is true.
right?
That is indeed true.
Yeah.
That is indeed true. Yeah, you have a good point there. Should we get on with it?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Because
You do the introduction, please, sir.
today is a very, 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 very special day. Kits, for the very first time on our show, we have a guest at the Beaver Lodge who is actually a currently elected and serving official or representative. We've had candidates a couple times, but we've never had somebody who was in office at the moment that we were recording. So this is a first for us. We are very, very pleased. We are honored that this person agreed. It's been very hard for me to keep it a secret.
You've been trying to unwrap the Christmas present all week, and I'm like, no, dude.
I haven't. So I'll tell you a little bit about our guest. He was born in Kingston in 1975 and has lived in Kingston throughout his life. He's a husband with 3 children. He has a degree in economics from Queen's University and studied computers at St. Lawrence College. He was elected to the city council here in Kingston in 2006, so started in municipal politics, then became mayor in 2010. Not too shabby.
Yeah, that's
And
pretty darn
then
good.
that's pretty good. And then he became elected as the Liberal MP for Kingston and the Islands in 2015, re-elected in 2019 and 2021. I take it that he was a pretty good mayor.
Well, I've read his pedigree, and I'm like, look, this is and I'm not kissing his butt. I know he's in the green room; he can hear and see all of this.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the thing: not kissing his butt. I've read about what he's done for his constituency, for the citizens of Kingston. This is a good guy. This is the kind of guy that we want to have on this show to talk with and figure things out with. So, shall we bring him in, sir?
Sure. Just to finish off the presentation, after the 2021 election, he was named the parliamentary secretary to the leader of the government in the House of Commons. And he's very passionate about environmental issues, has been very vocal that the government needs to take greater action to address climate change. Kits and Cubs, please put your paws up for MP, the Honorable Mark Garretson.
Good day, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. That's quite the introduction. I hope I live up to the expectations.
Well, I think you will. Yeah, because one of the other reasons we asked you to be on our show is because your Twitter game is pretty strong.
Yeah, great respect for that.
Absolutely, we have
much respect.
Yeah,
thank you.
You take some pretty I guess we could say trenchant positions.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you're very clear. You're not ambiguous. We know where you stand, and you're not afraid to put an elbow up now and then too.
True.
And the things that we respect the most is it's always fact-based.
Yes.
You don't go with QAnon stuff. You don't go with conspiracy theory stuff. You don't spin lies or say stupid things in the house. You're always fact-based. This show is facts, 100%. And we hold everybody to account on this show. Now, we're not going to grill you. That's not what we're going to do. It's nothing like that. But it's like, when we see an MP who spews obvious lies and conspiracy theory stuff, and I'm not going to mention any particular names, we get really upset by that because that's a disservice to Canadians. And whether any of the viewers or listeners voted for that particular political party or not is neither here nor there, because every single one of us, he works for us, right? You work for us. You represent all of us. I mean, even though you have your constituency base in Kingston, of course, you still, you're a member of parliament. You're a parliamentarian. Canadians want to see. Well, we want to see our country become the better place, the dream that it always has aspired to be. And then when you have, a certain member of parliament, who's, again, not going to mention the name, tends to go into the dis and misinformation area, I don't stand for that.
I think it's really easy in this day and age to be sucked into that, quite frankly. I see people that I've known my whole life start to talk about misinformation, or start to make claims that are based on misinformation or disinformation. And I think it's one of the biggest threats that we currently face
Agreed.
as a society is people's access to good information, reliable information. And I'm not even talking about opinions, just facts. And getting, we used to rely on people coming to their own conclusions based on the information that they absorbed. Now we tend to absorb the opinions and conclusions that other people have made, whether it's Fox News or, quite frankly, some of the more left-leaning outlets from time to time. It's the same game, and I think it's really important as society, especially in a democratic society that relies on people having information in order to make decisions, that they get that information and then make decisions on their own. Problem is that there's just too much information that's being fed to people that is just based on non-reality and based on conspiracy theory quite a bit. And it's I think it's one of the biggest threats that we currently face, is ensuring that real information get to people.
We're concerned about the same thing as well, and some of the things that we've observed during the course of this government is that this government has reversed a few things that the Harper government had put in place, like, for example, changing the age of retirement from 65 to 67, or reinstating the census. But there are certain things that haven't been done, like, for example, when the regulation of media ownership in Canada was opened up to foreign entities, because, like, for example, the Post Media chain is
Right.
66% owned by the Chatham Asset Management Group, I believe it is. Why hasn't this government, or given what is going on now, is this government considering for a future platform closing that loophole again, changing those ownership rules? Because we're talking about election interference as well, and this is a form that we cannot get Canadian-based media made in Canada for Canadians. And I'm wondering why hasn't, clearly with all the disinformation, this is something that we could do, and I don't know why nobody's talking about it.
Well, it's a really good question, and to be honest, I haven't heard much about it specifically. But I will say more generally on the issue of Canadian content and Canadian media. You will know, I'm sure, of legislation that recently came forward that was specifically targeted towards, getting the tech giants Google and Facebook to pay more. And it basically comes down to this, and I'll try to get back to the premise of the question in a second, but it basically comes down to this, is that the government and Canadians by and large recognize the fact that we're consuming our information on primarily American dominant platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, via Google. Back in the day, I when I was a kid, I was a newspaper carrier, and I would deliver papers. And at the end of the day, people would come home from work, and they'd open their paper and they'd consume a lot of information that way. In the process, in that paper would be some advertisements for local stuff, I'm sure advertisements for national stuff. That's how the paper would generate the revenue to pay the reporters, to pay for other things. But as we've digitized everything, as classifieds, there's no longer a classified section in a newspaper, as all this stuff has gone online. And what we're facing now is we have these Canadian news outlets that are creating this content and then putting it out on these dominant platforms. 80% of digital ad revenue goes to Facebook and Google. And what the government is saying is that, okay, that's all fair. I mean, they're doing their thing, they're running their business, but they're going to have to pay for a little to support these organizations a little bit. The problem is that when we bring forward a law like this, even though it's already happened to similar laws in Australia and France, you get the right throwing their hands up in the throwing their arms up in the air, screaming bloody murder, and that we're trying to censor media just because Facebook has decided we're not going to share content from the news outlets as kind of a bit of a protest. And it's another example of this misinformation. So many people write my office saying, why is the government censoring Facebook? And the reality is that it's Facebook that decided, no, we don't want to play your game, so we're not going to allow these this content there. So, when you ask the question about, why hasn't the government done more about, a specific issue like this? Well, quite often, there are consequences that come with trying to make these moves and trying to do them in a delicate way that respects the freedom of the press and the freedom of journalism to do their work. And we see that when we do try to make adjustments, that the right and our opponents just try to jump all over it. And in this particular case, we've seen conservatives jump all over this issue as though it's a freedom of information issue, when in reality they ran on it in the last election. In the 2021 platform, there is a full paragraph on exactly what we introduced, including referencing the fact that this legislation had already been introduced in Australia and France and is successful there. They said, we're going to build on that. Well, that's literally what we did. And then they've utilized that as a political wedge. Now, again, it's just back to the misinformation. Like, Canadians need to get the information, and they need to get it in an unbiased way. They need to understand, okay, Facebook and Google are making 80% of the ad revenue. It's worth X billion dollars a year. The news organizations are dying off. Literally, they need to be supported. These are the options that we have, and then let Canadians come to their own conclusion, rather than this other layer that kind of gets interjected into the middle of it that says, the government's trying to censor the media by not allowing Facebook to put content on there. And so I think it all comes back to this general theme of misinformation, and ensuring that people have the right and accurate information in order to be informed and create their own conclusions as to what should or shouldn't happen.
Okay. But to that end then, because you either get accused of one or two things, right? You get accused of trying to censoring, or, for example, you're buying off the media so that they publish your quote unquote propaganda.
Right.
Those are the two narratives. You can't win either way.
Yeah.
But okay, I understand having more dollars to fund more local media and more Canadian-based media, but they're only Canadian-based so long as they're Canadian-owned.
Right.
Like this. And so the original question was about the ownership of our media. Why is it that we are allowing now, like, okay, maybe we had an experiment, we tried it, and now we're at 2023, and the job of the government of Canada, regardless of the party or the stripe of the day, to ensure that the citizens are able to cast a fully informed vote.
Right.
That is being hindered at the moment. My right as a citizen to cast an informed vote is being interfered by the fact that, I don't know, about 80% of print media in Canada, which is from Post Media and the Sun Chain, is controlled by an American organization that is really, really, really favored by the GOP at the moment. So, and their editorial bent and their objectives in presenting information to us would not be the same. So we've tried the experiment. It's clearly not working. Disinformation is rampant. We know the sources of it. Why are we not closing the loop, or why is that not a policy plank or a fairness doctrine, for example? Again, it's a great question, and I'm unsure of the exact reason or where the government is in terms of its planning in that, and they might be well down that path. But I mean, I imagine that there's a number of things that interfere there. How it affects our NAFTA agreement and our trade agreements. What is and isn't allowed there. Will we be violating part of an agreement by doing that? Where do we draw that line on sovereignty? And also, there will be people out there that say, well, just because it's right leaning doesn't, is that a reason to just because the right leaning and American, is that a reason to interject and create policy around that? So again, I mean, I think that they're very delicate situations, and I think that quite often you have to look at the consequences of
what the ramifications will be in terms of how people interpret what the government is trying to do when it comes to something like that. I'm just giving my opinion on this. I don't know exactly why at this stage. I'm happy to look into it, but I think that there's genuinely we always have to be considering the manner in which the information is going to be utilized and going to be used to create potentially more misinformation and disinformation. But it is an excellent observation nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the thing that we're always concerned about is the mis and disinformation that gets spewed out on a daily basis. It's dangerous to democracy. It's dangerous to Canadians. It's a threat to our way of life, quite literally, because when you have, when you look at it, how did January 6th happen in the U.S.?
Right.
Mis and disinformation.
Right.
Complete bald face, and all have been proven since, and people are now, about to face some serious prison time for it, justifiably so. So
same thing with our occupation.
But I mean, like, it's been proven. But look at the situation in the United States. Even though it's widely been proven, there is a large percentage of folks that live in the United States that believe that there's some kind of conspiracy and corruption at the highest levels of government. I mean, there are people that believe that in Canada and continually spew that information. We have the leader of the official opposition in Canada, Mr. Poilievre, that is calling the Prime Minister of Canada a Marxist. You want to talk about misinformation. You want to talk about people getting real information. Well, I mean, you gotta, at the very least, we gotta have people that are in the position of leadership actually talking about the reality. And what really happens is there are a lot of people that buy into that. A lot of people that commenting on my newsfeed. You talked about my Twitter, saying this government's a fascist government. Or it not only is it a massive misunderstanding of the reality of what fascism is, but it is a slap in the face to anybody who's actually been subject to that political ideology and lived through those regimes. We live arguably around the world, but certainly in my belief, we live in the best country in the world. Are we always happy? Are we always going to get along? No, of course not. That's what democracy is all about. It's about fighting for your values. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But understanding that together as a collective, you've advanced forward, and you're making, everybody's coming from the right place of genuinely trying to make our country a better place. Problem is when you have people that are more interested in, grabbing onto power or using these really easy methods of manipulating and providing misinformation to people in order to use it for political gain. And we see that repeat. You see it in the United States, you see it in Canada, you see it throughout the entire world. I think that's the biggest single threat to democracy, generally speaking, is people's ability to consume information. I look at my parents, for example. They come from a generation where you receive news from somebody, well, it must be true because they're a reporter. They looked into it. They got to the bottom of it, and they're providing me information. My biggest fear is for those that are from that generation who will come across something on Facebook or whatnot and assume, well, this organization calls themselves the XXX news outlet, therefore it must be true. And a lot of us who are in the bubble or in the loop, like obviously you guys are politically motivated or politically minded, I should say. You can see beyond that, but I think there are a lot of people out there that just don't, and they're willing to just trust what they hear.
And that's the big concern, which is the whole reason this show exists, is because we kept seeing so much mis and disinformation being spewed about, and it was like, this is damaging to our nation, to our democracy, to the very lives we lead. It's like we have to do something. So Mr. Beaver had a blog for 8 years or 10 years at the time?
About 10 years, yeah.
About 10 years. And he approached me. He says, would you be interested in doing a podcast? I'm like, yes, let's do this. We have to. We have to do our part to try and make things better and try and get true facts out to people. Do we have a left bent? Yeah, but we're left of center, but we're very centrist at the same token. We're left in the sense that we want to see people helped, and we want to see people get a hand up. And we want, what was it, the late Senator
Hugh Siegel, probably.
Yes, Hugh Siegel, thank you. Bootstraps need boots,
Mhm.
right? The man who fully believed in a UBI.
Yeah,
So
like you couldn't have hit the nail on the head better with picking somebody. Hugh Siegel was an individual. Here's a progressive conservative who's a conservative his whole life. He represented the area of the region of Kingston and the surrounding area. I had an incredible relationship with him, both when I was on city council and mayor and as MP. We would talk about the issues. He would tell me what he believed in. I'd tell him what I believed in. We didn't agree on everything.
No.
And we certainly thought that, sometimes one or the other wasn't, but we were willing to talk. We were always willing to talk to each other.
That's the thing.
But we also came to the conversation with some basic core facts and some basic core understanding of reality. When somebody comes to the conversation and their core thought is the Prime Minister of Canada is a Marxist and we live in a fascist regime, how on earth can we ever begin to have a conversation and find mutual respect for the difference of opinion?
Well, that's just
and that's what I find to be the most alarming. But the individuals like Hugh Siegel, like Senator Siegel, who was an inspiration to so many in terms of the way he conducted himself. Unfortunately, there are fewer and fewer of them that are out there, and that's, I think, very problematic.
Well, look at what happened to David Johnston.
Yeah, but
yeah,
don't get me going on David Johnston. I mean, here's an individual who renowned throughout the country,
beyond
beloved
reproach,
throughout the
right?
country, revered by so many, an individual who had been appointed by previous liberal and conservative prime ministers to was sung the highest praises by both conservative and liberal prime ministers, and was somebody who could honestly approach what they're being tasked with. But unfortunately, there were many out there, in particular those on the far right, that used every opportunity to demonize him and to paint him as somebody that he wasn't. And it resonated with enough people. And I don't blame the guy, for saying, you know what,
I'm out.
I've had enough. I'm done. Like I can't do this. I can't do any more of this. And I think that, it's very, very troubling in our democracy, in our society, when you have these people who have contributed so much to our country that are literally being thrown under the bus by sitting members of parliament and the leader of the opposition, if I can be partisan for a second, and that's how are we ever, when they started talking about, okay, let's get a replacement, who on earth is going to accept that? Like, I mean, like, if David Johnston can't be held in a light as to be objective in terms of his ability to deliver on this, like, short of Jesus Christ, who else could actually do it that is not going to be subject to the exact same harassment? So,
well, Mr. Beaver said.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's what Mr. Beaver said, the same thing.
Yeah. Well, we saw it previously, too, with the Aga Khan. Right. I mean, the conservatives made him an honorary citizen. And then a couple of years later, if what they said about the prime minister was true, also would have to be true, is that the Aga Khan is a man that's amenable to that kind of influence and bribe and would take one.
Exactly. And but
right?
here's the thing.
Or he's asking for one.
Exactly. But here's the thing. It's like, this is what happens when political parties look to demonize somebody. They are, when political parties don't care about an individual's reputation, are willing to completely throw them under the bus and use them and exploit them to their best ability for a tiny little bit of political gain. Okay. And I think it's extremely, problematic when you see that. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, I mean, I've only ever been in government. I've been sitting in the House
Mhm.
of Commons on the governing side. I often think to myself, like, would I act like that if I was in opposition? I really hope that I wouldn't, and I'm pretty certain that I wouldn't go the extra mile to destroy a reputation because I think it might get me, a temporary tiny
Bump.
boost in the
Yeah.
polls. It's
Yeah.
just like
Okay.
it's
Well,
how do you sleep at night knowing that you've done that to somebody?
well, here's what I want to ask then, because
Yeah.
earlier you said sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. That's the way it is. But we seem to have a class of people or a group of people or a demographic of people or however you want to describe the collective
Mhm.
that it's sometimes I win, and if I don't win, I should have won.
Yeah. Well,
Something's wrong.
I mean,
So
I think
the sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. There's certain people that don't believe. Sometimes you don't.
well,
It's no, I always win, and if I didn't always win, then there's a conspiracy or something, right? Or something corrupt like
Yeah.
this.
well, I mean, like,
I'm supposed to always win. So
and
is
where
there
does
anything we can do about that? Is there any laws or whatnot? I know that, for example, in politics, when we talk about truth in advertising, we turn around and we say, well, we can't because you have to allow political speech. But my God, there's got to be some minimal things like, why is it not illegal for politicians to lie to Canadians about what the law allows or doesn't allow? I mean,
Mhm.
well,
surely there are some rules that we can all agree on that we can pass that can govern some behavior, couldn't
I
we?
think I think that okay, well, I think you hit a bunch of spots, and I think that first of all, people are more willing to be exactly what you're saying, which is if I didn't win, it's because it was rigged against me. Well, just
Yeah.
look to the
Look to
United
the south.
States.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like you have a former president of the United States that's using this strategy and using it effectively, and it works. So we shouldn't be surprised that others feel emboldened to do the exact same thing. You ask like why aren't there laws or things? I think that it it is the decency of being in a society
Mhm.
that obligates you to act in that way, to act in a truthful way, and to represent things to the best of your knowledge, and to not utilize that, especially as an elected official. I think that the way things go in democracy is basically, you hold people accountable when you vote for them.
Mhm.
So if it's determined that somebody's been lying to them the whole time, well, then the population, the populace, the electorate should vote them out. But sometimes the majority of the electorate agrees with them, and and what do you do? Like, I mean, that's democracy. That's how it works. And
Mm.
so I genuinely think that it's got to be through education. It's got to be through information and informing people about what
Civics. Basic
civics
civics.
and what's real and what's not. And I
Yeah.
think that that's one of the biggest struggles. I mean, I don't think that you would ever want to make a law around something like that because, well, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean,
About
look,
but
look,
about,
look
like, not for example, basic things like not lying to
yeah,
Canadians about what the Constitution allows and doesn't allow, what
Right.
the law allows and doesn't
well,
allow.
I mean,
There are certain things that you
when,
should not be allowed.
well, again, it goes back to civics. You guys would probably be surprised at how many people email my office when we have a debate around guns and say it's my Second Amendment right, and it's like, what's the Second Amendment in Canada? Like
It was
bringing
Manitoba, allowing
Manitoba
Manitoba to
becomes a
join
province, right?
Confederation. Yeah.
People just listen to the NRA stuff south of the border and assume that it all applies here.
Yeah.
You would be surprised how many people actually contact me and say that. But
That's
I mean, like,
disturbing.
it is fascinating. Just to watch that. But I should say that there is some accountability.
Mhm.
Like now, you're starting to see in the States where they're holding Donald Trump accountable for a lot
Mhm.
of the misinformation and lies. And I mean, like, I've been following some of the news that's going on there too. And now you're actually starting to see some of the people that were part of the insurrection that are trying to hold Donald Trump accountable. There's the
Yeah.
one individual that was sent to jail, I believe, for 7 years, and
Yeah.
he's now trying to sue Donald Trump because Donald Trump gave him the information
Mhm.
that led to his. I might not have the story exactly straight, but it's along those lines.
It's the
And I
gist of
mean,
it.
and I mean, like, so I think that there is a level of accountability in there. But I think that I think the accountability comes through the people. People have to hold elected officials accountable, but it's only going to happen if people have access to information. And I'm not talking about access to YouTube videos and watching people on YouTube. I'm talking about real information. We live in an age where, and it's only going to get worse with deep fake and whatnot, but we live in an
AI.
AI, we live in an age where we're consuming a lot of information, and just because you hear something, you have to start to say to yourself, okay, I better check this out before I totally buy into this. Google it, try to find somewhere, where a source that you can actually trust. I'm always leery of those sources that are like those news stations that I've never heard of before, because who are they? You never know, right? So I think that that's really important. And by the way, I say this about myself. Anything I say on here, anything I say to anybody, if you don't particularly agree with me and you think that maybe I'm not being fully truthful, Google what Google it, find out on your own, do your own thorough research. And then if I'm wrong, tell me. And I'm willing to take that. I'm willing to look it up myself and say, okay, I was wrong about this. It should have been, and it certainly wouldn't be the first time I've done it. But that's how we have to start operating in society.
And that's disappeared, right? That's just seemed to have vanished. It's always about everybody winning the nanosecond, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, here's the thing. My questions seem to have a similar theme here, because I'm wondering, this government's planning to go into a next election, might be within the 2 years if the supply and confidence agreement lasts until it lasts. It's almost another 2 years.
Yeah.
You recently had a retreat.
Ours is coming up next week, but
wasn't there a retreat?
There was a cabinet retreat in PI, but then we have our national caucus where everybody gets together next week. Yeah.
So cabinet retreat, the full caucus retreat happening, and I know that you're going to start planning the table and starting to discuss things that you would like to have on offer in the window for the next election. The reason I'm asking these questions, and they seem to have a similar theme, is because I believe that there is a wide swath of the public that would respond positively to a platform that would either have some rules or regulations or laws of some kind, yes, that would help us sift through the mountain of information in a certain way. That there were additional mechanisms, if not the government, for us as citizens to hold organizations accountable that knowingly publish information that is misleading, that gets in our way of casting an informed vote. Or if there is a pool of money set aside, a substantial pool of money, not just symbolic, to fund civics education or civics, but there needs to be, it can't just be, well, it's freedom of expression, and well, there may be some trade agreements, so I guess we just let things keep on running. More disinformation, more elbows up, more smearing, more defamation, and I guess you just are going to have to get better at sifting through it. There's a role for some guardrails, and I'm just wondering, like, is there something being considered in a policy package, or is that an item that will even be discussed, that there'll be something in a platform in the next election that will help us not just fund media outlets so that we have some access to information, but that we have some not just on the amount, but on the quality of the information that we are getting?
I really like the idea. I think that, like I said, in my opinion, people need more information, and the government can play a role in that. I think that the government and Parliament can set some guardrails and can try to help people get the best information in a way that satisfies them. And to that end, how do we help people get through the misinformation that's out there in a nonpartisan way, so that they can, I think that there certainly should be mechanisms in place. And I can tell you that we're always talking about misinformation. It's one of the the issues that is always being discussed. Especially, I talk a lot about it with my colleagues,
Mhm.
and I'm totally open to discussing proposals as to how the federal government or via parliament or whatever it is can help people get access to good quality information that is nonpartisan. I think that that's actually a really good idea. I have not given that much thought. I think that the suggestion is good. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because I think that it's actually a good idea. How can the government assist people in making sure that they have access to information in a nonpartisan, non-political way? I think that that's really important.
I'm thinking we call up Daniel Dale, ask him to come back home, and he just reports on all the lies that ever get spewed from the House of Commons.
Well, yeah. That's what we need. We need a fact checker.
Yeah, literally.
Literally, as it's being said.
Well, I mean, look.
I'm sure you guys can appreciate the fact that there will be people out there that say, look, I mean, if somebody can run all over David Johnson, I mean, they're
Mhm.
going to run all over somebody who is trying to do this work. I mean, but I mean, if it comes from a place of solid, reliable data and facts, then I think that it's legit.
It was the way they slandered David Johnston that really got me. He's Justin Trudeau's ski buddy. They skied once together when Justin was 12. Come on. How's that a ski buddy?
Yeah.
He's old enough to be his father. Like the absurdity of it all. The way they smeared a great man's name, a man who was without reproach. I don't think there was a person in Canada prior to the opposition leader doing and saying what he did. I don't think there was a person in Canada who could say a single bad thing about Mr. Johnston.
Right. But then they talk about it, and then they fundraise off it, and they help us stop David Johnson from, then they demonize him and cast him into this light of being a corrupt individual. And he was nothing. He has never been anything but a highly respected, highly revered individual throughout the country that has been crossed party lines. You wonder why people don't want to get involved in public service, whether elected or not. Here you have somebody who spent a lifetime in and out of public service. I'll never forget. I'll never forget the first time David Johnson came to see me when I was mayor, and he came to talk. He wanted to understand more about Kingston and what was going on in our region, and just like in his role. Nothing was ever about partisanship or it was always just, how do we make Canada a better place? And that's all he's ever cared about. That's all I've ever seen. And to see the man have to go through and be subject to that, I don't blame him one bit for just saying, I'm done with this. Find somebody else. Yeah.
Okay. I know that our time is nearly up, but I had one final question for you.
Sure.
We were talking earlier about Hugh Segal.
Yeah.
And prior to the last election, there was a lot of talk about building back better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a lot of people thought that the election was going to come in the summer, and then it came a little later in the fall. And then, inflation became an issue, and, what Putin is doing in Ukraine had been going on for well over 6 months. And it's clear that this was going to become protracted. And you have supply chain issues and inflation. You have all that going on. And all of a sudden you have to make a hard pivot. It seemed, we had the impression that the government was lining up to create some type of UBI type program based on the experience of the CERB, because everybody was talking about building back better and learning the lessons. And one of the things COVID did is it put some forensic light and showed all the gaps in society where people are really just falling right through the cracks. So we know exactly where to act. We've seen it. So we thought that there was something coming, and then there was pivot. And we understand that like this. I mean, people need to eat. People need a place to live. And even if core inflation says it's 3, if food inflation's at 9.1 and housing inflation's at 30, that 3.1 doesn't feel like 3.1 because everybody needs a place to stay and everybody needs to eat. So we're in an elbows up environment where affordability, cost of living, is one of the main issues, being able to buy a home, all those things that are basically, if you're looking at Maslow's pyramid of needs, everything that's on the base level here, home, shelter, food, security of the person, those types of things are being really played. Because we saw with the cabinet shuffle that there seems to be a new direction coming. We're getting some hints. We're seeing some, but we're wondering is, with the current mood, is there something more firm and definitive that is coming? Like there's a couple of policy items on that where you can stake a claim on the economy and stake a claim on affordability and actually, be able to give a couple of hip checks on your own, because right now, over the past year and a half, he's been pretty much allowed to say whatever he wants, free reign, and there hasn't been that much countering from the party. So again, you don't want to do it too early. I understand strategically when you have 3 years ahead, but now we're at 2, and we're doing that push. So is there, I know I don't want you guys to scoop yourself, but is there a concerted strategy? Is there specific areas and specific programs to appeal to youth, to appeal to rural Canada? Specifically, like those places, is somebody like really targeting and looking, bringing back a little bit of sunny ways, given that we can breathe a little bit now, or something? Or it just seems that there's a lack, if not aggressiveness, of very of firmness from the Liberal Party that said, "Hey, you guys can only go so far with this."
Mm.
Yeah, like, okay, I mean, you touched on a whole host of issues there, but I think the overall the overall theme is affordability.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't think that anybody is glossing over the fact that it's increasingly difficult to get those basic needs, as you mentioned. Now we're seeing that, you know, so many people, especially as we come out of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, and inflation is going up throughout the world. And now we're trying to tighten in on that. And you're seeing the monetary policy coming out of, the Bank of Canada to curb, to try to help curb the inflation. And the government spent a lot of money during COVID. And so I think that what you're seeing now across the world is tightening of that fiscal capacity in order to spend. And I think a lot of it is right, and it is important. What the government is really trying to do, whether it's the $10 a day childcare, whether it's the Canada Child Benefit, whether it's the increases to OAS, old age security for seniors, whether it's the increases in the GST that's being given back, the government of the day is really trying to focus those supports to the people that really need it. So you might remember the difference between the Conservatives' universal childcare benefit and the Canada Childcare Benefit, which currently exists. Is the universal one basically said, did not matter if you were making $20,000 a year or $5 million a year, everybody got a check for X number of dollars for every child.
Right.
What we would rather say is, okay, hold on. If you're making, if you're making a lot of money, you don't need that check that you're getting for the universal child care. Let's take that money and give more to the people that need it. So it becomes means tested rather than something that's just, so if you look at the current government's programs, they're all kind of focused around this idea of really giving and providing resources to those that really need it. Is it going to capture everybody? Unfortunately not. You try to do as much as you can. You brought up universal basic income. I can say that there are a number of Liberals that talk regularly about universal basic income. We had a private members bill a couple of years ago. I was one of the seconders on that. Hugh Siegel and I spoke, were very on the same wavelength in terms of universal basic income. Look, I was mayor of Kingston for 4 years. I saw, like, in Ontario, your municipality or your county or region, however it's set up in your area, is responsible for delivering those services on behalf of the province. I saw a lot of waste and a lot of money that wasn't going where it was supposed to go as a result of, over administration and whatnot. Universal basic income is a great concept because it just says, this is the threshold by which everybody is entitled to receive in order to get some of those most basic necessities. And it doesn't matter, all that matters is what your income is every year, and then you will be topped up to this amount. There are varying different models of how you implement it, and I won't get into those details right now. But at the core, it's about making it very easy for people to know and to break. What it also does is universal basic income you'll also see more entrepreneurs start to develop, people that want to start their own business but are afraid to leave their job because it means that they'll be without income. If you can give them those very basic needs, it might give them the incentive to take that risk. And who knows what business gets created out of that and how successful that individual becomes and what that provides to society as a whole. Right. So, I always look at universal basic income not as a social program, but as an economic program.
Oh, yes.
Because I think it will also encourage more women who are traditionally staying at home to get into the workforce. I think it will transition a lot in terms of how the economy works. And it will be, listen, when the economy does better, the very wealthy people do better.
Yeah.
When the economy does better, the middle class does better. When the economy does better, the people on the lower end of the economic spectrum do better. It's better for everyone. So for me, universal basic income, we have pushed, a number of us have pushed internally. Let's do a pilot project somewhere. I know at one time we wrote a letter supporting I think it was PEI, is one of the Atlantic provinces, requests to do a pilot project. I would love to see that. Ontario was doing a pilot project and then the current Ontario government came along, and even though they said in the election in 2018 they wouldn't scrap it, they did. It was literally the first thing they did on day one. And I really think that we will see that it won't end up costing us a lot more to do universal basic income, because you've got to remember, we're already supporting individuals, whether it's through social services, whether it's through supporting healthcare, whether it's in the emergency room. Like, so many people are already getting these supports. So I think that it's there's a lot to be said about doing a pilot project on something like universal basic income. Having said that, it is something that will cost a lot of money if it's not done very, very well. And therefore, I think we need the data by having done a complete pilot project to see how a made in Canada solution to UBI could be achieved. We've passed resolutions in our Liberal conventions about it. There's pressure on the government in terms of UBI, where they are right now on it.
Could the federal government maybe do a pilot project, maybe on a reserve?
That's another great idea. Yeah. Or maybe, at the end of the day, you have to appreciate the fact that a lot of these services are partially delivered by the feds and partially delivered by the provinces. So I think what you would really need is a provincial government that is interested in doing the pilot project, and you kind of work together to do it. A small province like PEI is kind of ideal, or a section of Ontario, maybe a reserve or whatever it is, would be ideal because you're working at it together. The federal government, it doesn't have the jurisdiction to just go in and do it on their own. So, much like the childcare agreements that were reached, you got to work with the other provinces to get them on board.
That's why I was wondering on reserve, because you might have more
because
the number of conservative-leaning provincial governments at the moment.
That's a really good point. Yeah. So maybe that would be a better solution. Actually, Never thought of that. I think
or maybe even
the idea.
maybe even Centertown.
Claim it.
because,
Claim it.
we,
Run with it.
we famously in Centertown vote Liberal or NDP here. We
Right.
don't tend to vote Conservative, which is why I think when the occupation took place, we were so ignored by the province of Ontario because that's just a bunch of poor and working class people who don't vote Conservative. But that's just my theory.
After the election is over, my father always told me, he was a former politician. He always said, after the election is over, you represent everybody.
That's right.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're Conservative or NDP. You represent everybody.
That's right.
And then when the next election rolls around, you fight for your values and what the Liberals stand for, or whatever political party you're aligned with. And I think that is great advice to any individual who is in office. Once you're elected, you represent everybody. But I know we see it, and Liberals are accused of it too. I think it goes around. But it's important. Although I realize that your comment was in a little bit of jest there, but you should not look at an area and say, I'm not going to help you because you didn't vote for me. I think that's extremely detrimental to democracy.
Well, absolutely, and that's the thing that. So, I mean, I'm gonna cite something real brief here, and then I'll just we can wrap it up. It was the thing I noticed when President Zelensky spoke to the House of Commons, addressed the House of Commons, and each leader of the party at the time stood up. And when it came to one specific leader, she stood up in the House and said, Conservatives will be there to support you. But every other leader of every other party stood up and said, Canadians will be there to support you. And I thought, that's rather telling, don't you think? They're not. Are they not seeing themselves as Canadians? I'm not asking you to say. You don't have to comment on that. I'm just.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that. I did not even notice that.
Oh, I did.
Yeah. Look, I mean, when you're the irony, I find the irony in that very rich, because every bill that we've brought forward to support Ukraine with aid, Conservatives have voted against.
I know,
albeit they're in the budget, so you can argue that they're voting against the budget, but it is slightly ironic. But notwithstanding that, listen, when we get elected, when anybody gets elected and you bring a budget and that budget passes through the House of Commons, the people, or, when it comes time to executing that budget, it doesn't matter whether it was brought by Liberals or Conservatives or NDP. It's now a Canadian ratified budget, and
right.
the money is, so Canadians are supporting Ukraine because this goes back to the beginning of our conversation and my reference to Hugh Segal. I might not agree with you on something. The whole point is we go into the House of Commons, we debate, we fight for our positions, and then we vote on something. And after we vote on it, it becomes the law. Mm-hmm. And we should move forward respecting the fact that we may have not got our way, and some of the times I haven't got my way, but it was the law, and now we move on. And we respect the fact that Canadians made a decision. Mm-hmm. And so Canadians have made the decision on several occasions to support Ukraine. And that includes Conservatives, Liberals, NDP, Green, and Independents.
Yep.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
But I appreciate. I didn't even catch that.
I did right away. I was watching it live, and I'm like, I can't believe what?
Yeah.
Like they see themselves as separate citizens. I don't know. I don't identify with a political party. I never have. I never will. I identify myself as a Canadian. I vote in every single election, municipal, provincial, federal. I always vote. Sometimes I have to hold my nose and vote. Luckily, in my riding, I haven't had to do that in the 12 years that I've been living here. I've been very comfortable. Each time I went to cast my ballot, I went, oh, there's the right person. There's the right person. I never had a thought. It was never a secondary thing, because I've had, luckily enough, to have some really great federal, provincial, and civic leaders, or municipal leaders, I should say, representatives in my riding. I've been very fortunate. Not everybody has that. I mean, if you live in South Carlton,
take it easy. Take it easy.
I'll reel it in.
Stop throwing out the bait.
I'm not taking the
bait.
I'll reel it in. No, don't. I wasn't expecting you to. I'm just. That's my inner thoughts. That's just my inner thoughts. Deep thoughts.
MP Gerritsen, thank you so very much for joining us here at the Beaver Lodge. Really appreciate that, an opportunity to chat with you. Thank you for being our first ever elected official.
Yes.
You've made us legit. So
Well, good luck in the future, gentlemen. And
Thanks.
I really appreciate the conversation. It was great chatting with you, and
Yes.
good luck with the work that you're doing to keep Canadians
Informed.
informed. And I appreciate what you're doing.
And thanks
Well,
so much, and please come
we
back
appreciate
anytime.
you. Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome to come back anytime you want to chat. If you ever want to just have a conversation about, I don't know, the Senators or maybe the Red Blacks. Or,
We like doing politics in full sentences. So
yes.
Sounds good. Have a great day,
All right.
guys.
All
Thank
right.
you
You
so
take
much.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well,
All right.
that was pretty awesome, sir. I thought that went really, really well. And I know this was something you've been eager, as the eager beaver,
But
eager to do for a long time. And I'm happy I was able to be a part of it, because I know that it meant a lot to you. And I know we had to move mountains to get the technology to cooperate with us.
it was like, we must record something
Yes.
somehow. I don't care how.
Hey, we got it done. It's in the can.
I will show up with a handheld.
I will put this up now for the kids. I forgot to do that earlier in the evening.
Oh yes.
Just to let them know, because we're recording this in the evening, but we'll play this in the morning because it's a morning show after all. And this was the thing. This was the show that last week on Friday you're like coming up, and I'm like, no, don't unwrap the gift.
Oh man, the time just went by so fast. There's so many other things
did.
I want to ask him, because I wanted to
Oh,
go
I had a
deeper on
dozen other
whether.
things too.
Yeah,
But he was very generous with his time. He gave us an extra 15 minutes than scheduled. So hey, we'll take it.
Yes. Yeah, but I had like questions like asking. I wanted to know more about like a policy for rural Canada, and wanted to know more about a policy for single Canadians. Like there's a lot of groups that just have seemed to been left out or not talked about for a while. Like this, and I would have liked to get in a little more, on sort of like what's being planned as in terms of the road for the next road to the next election and that type of stuff. But hopefully, now that we've had one, they say if you have one, you can have two.
Hopefully we can get more people to come in and talk. And again, it doesn't matter. Anybody wants to come in and have a chat with us, we will have a civil, open discussion. We're not going to attack you. That's not who we are. That's not what we do.
Yeah, we will press.
Yeah. But
Like I did, and
Yeah,
and stuff like that, and we'll ask questions, like why aren't you looking at this type of thing, or like we didn't ask necessarily easy questions.
No. And he was very forthright with us. But now that being said, if the official opposition leader shows up, I think I'm going to have to put myself on mute. Just being honest with you here.
Okay.
Because I would want to demand, what's with the Marxist? What's with the accusing liberals of lighting fires? What's with all this, anyway.
Yeah, I hear you. Oh, well, kits and cubs.
I'll be right back.
Okay. This is the end of this episode of the True North Eager Beaver interview project. We hope that you loved listening to this, because we really love making this for you, and we are really, really, really excited that we got this opportunity to be able to do so. Remember, sharing is caring, and word of mouth is priceless. So let your peeps and poops know all about us. And because democracy is something that you do, as always, if you can donate to the Red Cross, we would really appreciate that. Help out your brothers and sisters. Of course, write your MPPs, your MPs, your MLAs, your members of the media, your senators, your municipal politicians. Let them know that you demand better. If you're living in Ontario, why not make a plan to stop by your MP's constituency office and let them know that you won't be satisfied until the current Republican governor of the state of Ontario is removed from his position by his caucus. There's not another election for 3 years in Ontario, so if you want them to throw Ford overboard, you have to go to your MPP's office and basically keep going and showing up, and then bringing friends and have them show up, and then sending them emails and writing letters and asking for meetings and flooding their phone lines until the caucus says, you know what, sorry, you're just too much of a liability. You got to go. It's the only way, or else you're going to have to tolerate him going Jesus shucks for the next 3 years. and get yourself a membership to the Liberal Party convention and vote for a candidate who can take him out politically.
Agreed.
Agreed. All right. Let's see. What else do we have here? Remember, sharing. Oh, yeah, I said that the sharing is caring part. If you really like this podcast, you can find us on Google, Spotify, Apple, every single Grizzly Beaver friendly platform that there is. Retweets, shares, gentle corrections, constructive criticism, compliments, requests, and positive reviews are always welcome. So if you want to make sure that would come to you when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, well, then you need to go to our Podpage site sponsored by The Ray Girl. Thank you so very much. Podpage.com/The True North Eager Beaver. That's podpage.com/The True North Eager Beaver, lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you subscribe, well, you're on the list and you won't miss an episode. And since you are subscribing, even though we're not live, I am pretty sure that if she were here, Kit Elaine would tell you to smash those buttons.
Smash that button,
And
baby.
smash. Yeah.
Smash. Like,
Yes.
share, and subscribe. Our 3 favorite words. Like, share, and subscribe. Actually, not our 3 favorite words. Free beer is, I think, my 2 favorite. But, I'm being realistic. Free beer. Free beer today. When they see free beer tomorrow, you show up the next day and like, no, it's tomorrow. What? No, it's tomorrow. You show up the next day. No, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. Free beer today. Those are my 3 favorite words.
Free beer today. Oh, my word. Oh, geez. And finally, if you really, 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 really just love us so much that you just can't stand it and you got to do something about it, like you just got to express your love, worry not. Worry not. We got you covered because we work for tips. Feel free to buy us a cup of coffee or a pint of Guinness or a mug of hot chocolate. Or, you know what? Actually, I could use probably a Caesar or a double.
Yeah, right about
To be totally honest.
It's been a couple of tense and stressful days.
It's been, yeah. I've been a tense beaver. Yes.
Yeah. We had to use some backup gear because we have a dead computer. So, but this worked out well.
We MacGyvered it and it worked.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. Thank you.
We'll get everything fixed up with all the new gear soon. It's just like how serendipitous. Here's some new equipment. Here's some new software. Here's some new stuff. Boom. Computer dies.
Steve Clark resigns. You have your first interview with an elected official. And the computer works.
Oh, yeah. Several times. It was very stressful.
Oh, my God. Jeez.
All right. We got through it. Let's
wrap
it up.
We got through it. Nevertheless, we persisted. We persisted. Was it persisted or persevered? Persisted.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, she persisted. So
yes,
we persevered.
Yes. She persisted. We persevered. There we go. So if you want to support us and show us your love, that squiggly by Mr. Grizzly's head right there will bring you to our coffee page. And if you are listening, you go to coffee. That's ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver. ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, lowercase letters, all in one word. And that's where you can make your donation. From the Beaver Lodge, this is your Eager Beaver and Mr. Grizzly saying, until next time, dear kids, it can be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. Mr. Grizzly, some words of wisdom, please.
Well, I'm going to use your quoted theme for this program. Democracy is something you do. Get out there, write your MPs, your MPPs, your MLA, your city councillor, your town councillor, write to the mayor. If there's something that needs to be taken care of in your community, write a letter, drop it in the mailbox, and send it to them. Voice your opinion. And also maybe send your old flip-flops to a certain particular individual on Parliament Hill. I mean, summer is winding down, so you're going to need new flip-flops next year. Send the old ones to them. You know what I mean.
All right, Mr. Grizzly. Roll them credits, please. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. All right, kids, before we go, since I haven't had a chance to do a show in the last few days, a couple of really quick tidbits. The election writ has been dropped in Manitoba. Election date is October 3rd. So we'll hopefully have some news for you from that. And at the World Cup of Basketball, Canada defeated Slovenia today in the quarterfinal, so advances to the semifinal. In tennis, even though all Canadians were quickly eliminated in singles from the U.S. Open, in women's doubles, Gabriela Dabrowski and Leila Annie Fernandez played against each other in the quarterfinals. So Gabriela Dabrowski won in that match, goes to the semifinal. She's paired with Erin Routliffe, who is Canadian-born, but somewhere along the way, I guess, immigrated to New Zealand and plays for them now. But there were 3 Canadian-born people on the court in that match. And it was really, really interesting. And there was one other thing, and for some reason, I forgot what it was.
Must have been a lie. Must have
It
been a lie.
must have been a lie.
That's
All
what my
right.
mom always says.
All right. That's all I got. Those are the things I remembered off the top of my head. Oh, yeah. The Bank of Canada rate remained unchanged. So there you go.
Okay, cool.
All right.
See ya.
See ya.